Hi, Jack.
Hi. When and where were you born?
Oh, I was born in Morris, Iowa, which is a little tiny town, but I was born on a farm. And my dad was sick, so he couldn't see me because I was born in the house.
Right.
And so his hired hand got to see me before he did, so that was pretty interesting way to.
What is a hired hand?
A hired hand is somebody that helps, that helped him do the work on the farm.
Okay.
Okay, drove tractor and helped with the farm stuff. Okay?
Yep, got it.
Got it.
Alright, where was your family originally from?
Oh, they were my mom's family was from Germany, and my dad's family was from Holland.
Alright, awesome. Do you know what your parents did for a living?
Oh yes, they were farmers. My mom was a housewife, and my dad did all the farm work. Yes.
Alright, awesome. What other relatives did you have contact with while growing up?
Oh my goodness,
No way. Wait, we can find
stop it. Get out of here. Here, let's put some. Get out. Get out.
Alright. So what were your parents' religious background, and how was the religion observed at home for you guys?
Oh, my dad and mom were very religious, and they both went to the Presbyterian church. We always had prayer before we ate breakfast, dinner, and supper. They called dinner like we referred to dinner supper.
Right.
Like their big meal was at noon, and then they had just like leftovers or something in the evening after my dad got done with his work.
So throughout your life, have you stayed religious? Like always believed in God and everything?
Oh yes, very much.
Right.
Yes.
How many relatives or how many siblings did you have growing up?
I had 4 sisters. There's 4 sisters of us, so 3 sisters, and then my brother. And my brother passed away several years ago, and now I still have my 3 sisters.
Right. Okay. Do you remember anything about your grandparents?
I do. My grandmother was named Agnes, and that's why I am called Agnes, because I looked just like her, I guess, when I was born. And we used to go to town, which was George, Iowa, and we went grocery shopping. And then after we were done grocery shopping, we would run down the street and visit Grandma Rekema, which was Agnes.
Right.
And she'd have tea for us and maybe cookies or, a treat. And so we did that every Saturday. That was on my dad's side. Sorry, I think my mom's side. But my mother's side was Peter,
right,
and Vinker. And Ella was his wife. And we visited them a lot. They lived in town, and Peter was just the coolest. He was a carpenter. And so he made things out of wood that you wouldn't even dream that he could do. So it was really interesting, yeah.
What were your duties around the house when you were a kid? Did it break down by gender at all with your brother?
That's interesting because I always got up at 5 o'clock in the morning and had to go milk the cows.
Mm-hmm.
And my sisters, none of them did that, but I did. And I got to drive the tractor and help my dad. And of course, my brother did too, but I was the only girl that got into the farm work. And
right.
Yeah. So every morning I milked about 5 or 6 cows.
Jeez, that's crazy.
Yeah, it is a little crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. Did you guys have any Christmas, Thanksgiving, or any traditions like that when
yes.
holidays came around?
Very much. We always went to Grandma Rekema's, which was Agnes.
Right.
And all of my dad's brothers and all the sisters and everybody was there. And we always had this great big dinner. And us kids used to play in her upstairs, and we would jump from her dresser to the bed. And then our mom and dads would come up and say, "Stop that, you kids, don't make all that noise," and stuff. But we had so much fun. And we always wanted snow at Thanksgiving time.
Right.
And then Christmas was more to do with, we went to church on Christmas Eve, and then my mom always had a big Christmas dinner, but it was more intimate family stuff instead of all of the relatives. So it was fun.
What was school like for you? Did you like anything about it? Did you think it was hard?
School was, I went to a country school, and I had to walk 2 miles to go to school, and we were all the grades were in one building. So if you took this room, there were 8 grades in there, kindergarten through 8th grade.
So it's just one big room?
One big room.
Oh,
and
geez,
the rest of us would sit at our desk, and then the teacher would say, okay, kindergarten students, and there were probably 2 of them or something. But we learned a lot, and then when I was in the 8th grade, then they built a new high school, and I got to go to a big school at the 8th grade. So, yeah, it was good.
Do you remember having like any close friends at school that you still have to this day, or?
I do. I have a girlfriend named Georgia Smid. She and I were really good friends in high school, and we still text each other or email each other, and we've been and then last year, or a couple of years ago, when I went home for my high school reunion, then we saw each other, and it was really, really nice. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Did you have any teachers that you liked a lot more than others, or any teachers that you didn't like?
It's funny you would ask that, because there was a Mrs. Bruns, and she was real short, and she was kind of round.
Right. Okay.
And she was, we used to make fun of her and laugh, about her and stuff like that. And then when I got older and got married, my dad made me go to her house and tell her I was sorry that I had made fun of her and laughed at her. My favorite teacher was Mrs. Ilders, and she was so fun and made everything not like you're learning a bunch of stuff. It was like you were learning but having fun doing it. And she was probably my favorite teacher.
That's good.
Yeah.
Did you have any favorite subjects while growing up, and did those favorite subjects stick with you when you grew up with a job outside of school?
Reading was one of my favorite subjects, and I like to read. Home economics, I was a very good seamstress, and one time I entered a contest where I had made a dress and a jacket, and it had to be lined and everything, and I entered a contest. I didn't win, but at least I did it. Yeah. The second subject was speech, and I went to speech contests and won the state contest one year, and that was probably my favorite above all.
When you grew up in school, were there cliques in your school, like cliques as in like different groups of kids?
Oh yes, very much. Yeah, it was probably the town kids were a clique, and then us country kids, we tried to fit into the town kids, but they didn't always let us. But there were definitely cliques. I don't think there were gangs, but definitely cliques, big time.
Right.
Yeah.
So why do you think you guys wanted to be more a part of the town group instead of the country people?
Because I think the town people looked down on us farmers, because we had to work hard, and they got to, after school they could go downtown, and I was had to ride the bus, and then I had to do my chores and stuff, and so I think we always thought, oh, they were a little better than us, and they thought we were a little
bit
worse than them. Yeah.
Right. Was it okay for girls to be smart at your school?
Oh yes.
Right.
Yeah,
okay.
they were very. Yeah, in fact, the valedictorian in my class was a girl, and she was super smart, but she didn't have any friends. Because she was so smart, and all she could do was be smart, and she couldn't have fun. So yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, leaving high school, did you have any plans, like going out of high school, for a job that you wanted to do? And if so, did your parents approve of those plans?
I did. I wanted to be an X-ray technician, and so I went to. I graduated from George High School, and then I went to Sioux City, Iowa, and that's where the X-ray technology school was. It was in a hospital, And after I graduated, I stayed there and taught physics to
Right.
incoming students. So that was very fun. But I did X-ray technology for about 12 years after I graduated.
So did your brother have different expectations from your parents than you and your sisters did, or?
I think my brother was spoiled because he was the only boy.
Right.
And so he had a car before any of us could have a car. None of us had our own car except him. He had his own car. So yeah, I think he was a little bit spoiled. I'd say spoiled.
Right.
Yeah.
Throughout high school as well, did your parents or did your and your parents' relationship change at all while in high school, or did it just stay as it was your whole life?
I think we were closer to our mom because she would go. I was a cheerleader in high school, and so she would go to the basketball games with us. And my dad was, he had to work so hard, but my mom was very involved with all of our activities, and she used to support us that way. So yeah, they were supportive, but my mom was more actively supportive.
Right.
If that makes sense.
How did your mom and dad feel about like you guys dating in high school, or like having relationships with other people?
I couldn't date until I was 16.
Right.
And
Is that just due to being a part of like the church, or is that just like a rule that you guys had?
it was just
the family.
kind of a thing that in those days you were 16 before you dated. And,
Right.
and yeah.
All right. What jobs did you have as an adult? You mentioned that being an X-ray. Sorry, I forgot what
Technology.
it was. Yeah,
I was an X-ray
technology.
technician. And then when my husband and I moved to a different state, then I didn't want to get that license. So I went into mortgage banking, and I did mortgage banking, and then I went into retail and worked for Nordstrom and
Right.
that. Yeah.
All right. What was your favorite job out of all the ones you had, and
What was my what?
your favorite job out of every single one that you had?
Oh, I liked working at Sierra School. I was an administrative assistant, and I used to organize all the teachers with their budgets. And then when we bought a new school, then I'd go in and train everybody. And I was there for about 15 years, and I just really, they were all behavioral kids, challenged kids, special ed.
Mm-hmm.
And I just love those kids, and
That's great.
bring them cookies and milk, and had a good time with them. Yeah.
Is there a job that you did not like, or you almost regretted, or you'd change?
I think mortgage banking was very difficult because my husband and I both were in mortgage banking, and so we talked a lot about, business, and our kids would say, "Stop! You got to do something different besides always talk about your business." So I think I regretted that a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So here we go.
Okay, here we go.
When and where did you meet Dennis, and what drew you to him?
Oh my goodness. Okay, so I met Dennis. Us girls used to go to Vermillion, South Dakota, which was about an hour away from our X-ray school.
Mm-hmm.
And we would go to Charlie's Pizza House, looking for guys, of course.
Yes.
And one night, I remember my hair was blonde and it flipped up, and I had a turquoise top on, and I don't know. Anyway, I walked in, and he said to his buddies, he said, "If there's a girl that I'm going to marry, it's going to be her." And so he asked me to dance because they had a little dance floor.
Right.
And then I had to buy him a pizza because he didn't have any money because he was going to school. So I bought him a pizza. And that's how we started.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So how did it progress from there? Like, when did you guys decide? Like, all right, you guys knew each other. Were like, you knew you were the ones for each other.
Well, on my third date, he asked me to marry him.
Right.
And I said, "Well, I have nothing else to do, so yeah, I'll marry you." And then 6 months later, we were married. So we met in April, and then in November, we got married.
Was there anything difficult about being married so fast, or even throughout the marriage? Was there anything difficult?
That's a good question, because sometimes you don't know if it's like your soulmate,
Right.
but you work through it, and marriage is not easy.
Mm-hmm.
There's always challenges. You disagree on, how to raise children, and so yeah, it was a challenge, but we never thought about divorce. I
Right.
mean, that just wasn't something that we
Mhm.
would do. So
Yeah.
yeah.
What do you think was most satisfying about being married to him?
Oh, he was a friend. We ran. Every morning we'd get up at 5 o'clock and go running. We like to do the same things. We like to go to movies. I think he was my best friend, and I think I was his best friend. So
Right.
I think that's important. Yeah.
Mhm. So for someone like me today, what would be your number one advice if I was going into a serious relationship? What would you tell me, like, to be aware of, or just anything like that?
I think I would advise you to not necessarily say I love you right away, but more like, what does she like to do and what do I like to do? And if
Right.
you're compatible with what you both like to do. I think that's really important about a marriage, is that you do fun things together, and then you can talk seriously with one another, and open, and
Right.
have a conversation about your thoughts and your feelings, and don't let that be suppressed. I think that's really important.
All right.
Okay.
So, children. Who are your firstborn, and just all of your children?
Okay. We got married in 1962, and then Denise, our daughter, was born in 1966. So we were married 4 years, and then we had Denise, and then we had Derek 4 years later, which was in 1970, and then Damon, your dad,
Right.
was born in 1974. So every 4 years we had a baby, and then we thought, we're done.
That's it.
Yeah, that's all.
All right. What were they each like when they were young, and have they stayed true to what they were like today?
Denise used to be, well, she is still called a social butterfly. Every time I go to a teacher meeting, she'd say, "Oh, Denise is so friendly with everybody, and she's so social, but she doesn't get her work done." So
Right.
that we always had to struggle with that. And she's kind of like that today.
Yeah.
Derek was always a leader, and he loved to be president of his class, president of this, everything. He was very active, but he'd get home from soccer like at 8 or 9 at night, and then he'd sit up and do his homework for 2 hours, and we'd feed him, after he got home from soccer, because he played soccer.
Right.
Damon was he was my baby. He was just a nice kid. He was a runner, so we did a lot of traveling with his running team. We had a lot of fun with that because we were runners, so he would, join us and run even when he was little. He was always has been very slender, and something funny about him was when he was born, we all said, "Oh my gosh, he looks like a little bird," because he had these little legs and these big feet, and he was just but he was so cute. And then when he went to preschool, it wasn't preschool, it was private school.
Right.
And he always said, "I go to private school." So he was always very studious, and he was just a really good kid. Yeah, he was great.
What were their relationships when they were kids, like them together? And
That's a little difficult because they were 4 years apart. And so I think Damon and Derek probably went to high school 1 year at the same time. But
yes.
Denise and Derek didn't go to high school at the same time. So they weren't, I don't think they were real close. But then after they got older, then they grew, especially Derek and Damon.
They grew a lot closer.
They are really closer, yeah. And I know they call each other a lot.
All right. What was most satisfying about raising all three of them, and what were the most difficult things about it?
I think the most satisfying thing is that they all turned out to be good kids. And that's really nice for a parent to say, gosh, these kids are all successful. The challenging part is seeing how different they are when they become adults. Um, they all have their own personalities and they are very successful, but they're very different.
Right.
And that's hard to explain. Yeah.
All right. Didn't you or Papa D ever serve in the military?
Papa D served in the Navy.
All right.
And he was stationed in Hawaii. And he always said, I fought the battles of Waikiki Beach, because that's where he was. But he was a navigator in an airplane. And so when they would fly, and then he was a navigator. So he served for only 2 years, but that's when I met him after he got out of the Navy.
Do you know if it ever affected his life after he served the military, or was there not really any like after effects of him?
I don't think so. No, I think he was always proud that he had served the country. But as far as if you're referring to PS, whatever that
PTSD.
is, yeah, I don't think he ever had
Suffered
that. It wasn't known in those days that they just served and that was what they did. So yeah.
All right. So how was life like while your kids were in their mid-20s, and did you ever contact them that much when they were in their mid-20s or like in their middle of their lives?
Yeah, Derek was in mortgage banking, and so he moved from Sacramento to Denver, and so when he was in Denver, of course we lived in Denver, but that was way before Derek moved to Denver. Damon moved to Salt Lake City and has lived here ever since that. So we like to come here to visit, and we do that as much as we can. It wasn't always easy.
Mm-hmm.
And then Denise, she married somebody from Sacramento, and so we saw them a lot.
All right. When you were getting older, did you want to have grandkids when you were growing up?
Oh yeah, I could hardly wait for them. Yeah, it was that's a nice part of having kids, is you get grandkids, and they don't all turn out as much as you like they would turn out. But that's the way life is, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So our last name is Dykstra. Do you know anything like why we're called the Dykstras, or like any like the origin of it?
Only that when Dennis's parents, Dennis's dad was from, I think he was from Holland, but they called them Dexter, Dexter is how they spelled it. And then when they got to America, then they changed it to Dykstr, and I don't know why.
So
I don't know that much about it yet.
Right. All right. So. Does it happen? When you were older and you had grandkids, did you have any that were like a particular favorite, like going, like
Their houses?
yes, like going like to each city?
I do. Yeah, it's kind of hard to say that you have your favorites, because that's not really
it's not
nice.
Yeah, but
But
it is.
and I know that you're interviewing me, but
Mhm.
Jack and Al have always been our favorite. I think both of our favorites. When Dennis was still alive, we would love to see. Like, I was here in Salt Lake when you were born, or right after you were born, and I remember holding you, and it was really special.
Right.
Derek's children we were very close to because they lived in Sacramento at the time, but we always felt like Jack and Al were special.
Right.
Yeah, probably because Damon was the baby and he was spoiled.
Yeah. So, are there any like family recipes that you created and would like to have like brought down?
Uh-huh. There are Swedish pancakes, which we're going to have on Christmas morning.
Right.
I didn't create that. I think Dennis's mother did, but we have them every Christmas morning, and then you serve lingonberries with the Swedish pancakes because she was Swedish, so that's why the lingonberries come in. Christmas Eve, we always went to church. We don't anymore do that, but when I was a kid, we would go to church, and then we'd get to open one present and then go to bed, and then during the night Santa Claus would come, and then our presents would be under the tree. But those traditions still, Swedish pancakes is and then Thanksgiving. Oh, Derek's favorite is a ribbon salad.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like lime jello on the bottom, and then a whiter filling in the top, and then a red on the top, and that's for Christmas. And he always says, "Mom, you gotta fix the ribbon salad." I don't think we're gonna do it this year, but we did always.
When you were a kid, who taught you how to cook all of these meals that you
My
still?
mom. My mom always. My dad didn't cook at all, but my mom, she always taught us how to do things on the stove, how to bake, and we didn't have a dishwasher, so we always had to wash our dishes by hand, and those were the times that I remember Mom really talking to us and finding out how we were doing as kids, and sometimes the conversation would turn into real nice, friendly talk.
Right.
And she'd give us advice on life or a guy that we were dating or something. Yeah.
So out of your siblings growing up and now, have you had one that you've been closest to or like talked to the most?
Yes, Twyla, the youngest. She's 10 years younger than me, but her and I have always been very close. And she came to Sacramento and stayed for the winter. She's from Iowa. Mm-hmm. So she came, 2 years ago, I think, and spent the whole winter with me from, I think she came in October, and then she went home in March. And then I went to her place all summer that year. Right. And we've just always been close. Like, she called me this morning, so I have to call her back.
Right.
And we just talk a lot and have good talks. Yeah,
mm-hmm.
She's very, very nice.
Do you think there's a reason why you're closer to her than you were to the other ones?
I don't know. I think we like to do a lot of fun things together. Both of us like to shop. She's a nurse, and I worked always in the hospital, when I was, younger, and I think her and I just have a lot in common. So, yeah.
Right. So, how is your neighborhood now? Like, when you're, or like right now, when we come to visit you, do you like the neighborhood you're in and everything around it, like the people? I know we like to go to that pool a lot when we are there, but how do you feel about that?
I love where I live. I'm glad I live where I live. I have very good friends. I have about 7 close women that we go, some we go to lunch with and some we go to dinner with. But I always feel like if I needed anything, I could call any one of them. So it's a condominium, so we live really close to one another,
Right.
But it's safe. We never have anything bad happen to us, so it's a good place to live. I'm really glad I live there.
All right. What are your favorite childhood memories that you have now?
My favorite childhood memories, I think this sounds really strange, but I used to love to drive the tractor. And when I could be with my dad driving the tractor or working in the fields, I was really happy. I wasn't a good cook growing up. My other sisters were good cooks, but I was a farm girl. I loved to help my dad.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. On the note of family, do you know when we colonized to the U.S.? Like our ancestors, do you know anything about that? When we came here or anything around that time?
On my dad's side of the family, they came through Ellis Island. which is, by New York. So they came from Holland and
Right.
Germany, and so they came through Ellis Island. And I don't know about Dennis's grandparents. I don't know much about them.
Mhm.
Sorry.
No, that's totally fine.
Yeah.
All right. So, when they settled there, did it kind of rotate when, like, they had kids? Did they move out of where they were originally? And then has it just kind of strayed away from where they first colonized from in the U.S.? Or has it always just been around?
Well,
the
my mom and dad, they've lived in the same area ever since. Because my grandma Agnes, her and her husband, he was, I think his name was Dick, and they moved to George, Iowa, which is where my parents were. They always lived in the same area.
Mm-hmm.
Dennis's mom, my husband's mom and dad, I don't know where they were born in they were raised in South Dakota, in small towns in South Dakota.
Right, okay. Does the Dykstra family have any, like, special sayings or expressions that you guys have? Or anything that you say individually that's just kind of your own thing?
My mom and dad used to say, remember who you are and what you represent. And Dennis and I had done that with our kids.
Right.
Every time they went out on a date or any time they went to a basketball game, remember who you are and what you represent. And so it was kind of like a quote, not a frivolous quote, but
Mm-hmm.
we always wanted them to act in the way that they were raised.
Do you think you've created any traditions for the family for us to pass down?
I hope so. I'm not sure, but I know the Swedish pancakes is a big deal for all of them.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think, I hope that the traditions will continue to carry on after I'm gone.
Right. All right. Do you have any, like, special objects or any of that stuff that you keep, like little hobbies that you have or things that you brought through your childhood?
I have a music box that I've had, I don't know how many millions of years, but
Right.
I've always had that music box. And I used to keep my jewelry in there, but now I have too much jewelry that doesn't fit in that little music box. So now I just have the music box, but I know exactly where it's at.
Mm-hmm.
And I always, whenever we move, I take that music box with me and I open it and it plays music, and it's just one of my favorites. I also have a rock that and it has love on one side, and on the other side it says pray. And so when I feel like I need to do something, then I take that rock and I rub it, and then when I pray at night, then if I'm really seriously thinking about one of the kids or grandkids or whatever,
Right.
then I get that rock out, and then it's close to me. So I still have it, and I've had it for a long, long time.
Mm-hmm. So, do you think, with being religious, do you think you were religious because your parents were, or did you kind of feel like, okay, I think I'm religious, like you came to believe it on your own too? Or do you think it was just because your parents kind of brought you into it?
I think it's because my parents. We went to church
Right.
every Sunday. I mean, you didn't miss.
Mm-hmm.
And if you had a date on Sunday night, which was frowned upon, but then you and him went to church, and you
Right.
couldn't go to a movie on Sunday. You couldn't. I mean, all the shops were closed on Sundays in my little town, and I think part of that was just because we were raised that way. But then also, when I got older, then I realized that it wasn't necessarily because of my parents, but because then I felt it too.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm grateful for that. But I'm grateful that they taught me that.
All right, awesome. So I know you and your sisters have like a tradition where you guys get together and have like a sisters trip.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know why that like, do you know who started that and why you guys started to do it?
After all of our kids were married and out of the house, one year we went to, when my parents sold their house, we all went there, and we went through all their belongings and went through, because they were going to move to an assisted living place.
Right.
And so when they did that, then all of us kids were there, and we went through photo albums, and we just found all sorts of really interesting things. And I think, and we used to, when we visited my parents, we always ended the evening or ended the vacation with standing around the piano and singing hymns, and we did that every time we got together. And I think that was the start of us four girls really realizing that we needed to first of all get to know each other, because we'd all been gone, we'd all raised our families, and so then we decided to have a sister trip. And the first one we had was at my sister Twyla's house, and then we went to New York. We've come Napa. We came to Napa. We went to Arizona, to Sedona. So we always try to go to a different place in the country and just get to know about the culture there. And we try to do it every year. We don't always get it done every year,
Right.
but we really try to, because it's important to all of us.
So out of all the trips that you've had with them, do you have any favorites or any notable ones? Notable experiences?
Yeah, we went to Sedona in Arizona, and it was so beautiful. And there was this little place where you could walk down this path, and you could build a vortex, which is rocks upon another rock.
Mm-hmm.
And so we did one for the four sisters, and then we each did our individual one. And you don't ever disturb another person's vortex, because it's the aura that's created. It's supposed to feel really special.
Right.
We never got that, but
Mm-hmm.
it was just a fun trip, and we really had a good time. We had massages, and we had facials, and we just had a lovely time.
Could you tell me a little bit more about your brother and what happened to him and all of that stuff?
My brother was the oldest, and he lived, when him and his wife moved to Palo Alto, California. Right. We were pretty close with him, mm-hmm. and we would visit each other. And every Thanksgiving, if my parents couldn't come, then we'd go there, or they'd come to our place, and we always had Thanksgiving dinner together with them. And so we got to be pretty good friends. And then he got leukemia. And one weekend, my sister-in-law called me, and she said it would be really nice if you could come and visit us, because Stan, which is what his name was, mm-hmm. he wasn't doing very well. And so I told my sisters, I said, I'm going to go visit Stan, and I'll let you know how he's doing. And when I got there, I thought, oh my goodness, he is really sick. Mm-hmm. And so I called the workplace where I was working, Sierra School, and I told them that I couldn't come back by Monday. I'll have to stay. I hadn't brought any clothes, because I was only going to be there like for the day.
For the day, right.
And but I called the school and said my brother is really bad, and so I was there when he passed away, mm-hmm. and it was really sad. But my sisters then flew out right away, and so we kind of called that a sister trip, because we stayed in the hotel, because there wasn't room in my sister and brother's house, so we stayed at a hotel, and so we had a good time, Yeah, celebration for life, and mm-hmm. yeah, he wasn't in pain anymore, so that was good. Yeah.
Do you still keep in touch with his wife, or they just kind of fell off once he passed away?
For a few years we did, and then she met someone and remarried, and she moved from Palo Alto, and then now I think she's in the Midwest somewhere, but I don't have any contact with her at all.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, well, for today we can be done.
Okay. How long did we do it?
40 minutes.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, we're almost done.
All right. So how do you think? What do you think?
That was great.
Can we do it? Can we watch it?
I think so.
Okay. Well, I don't want to watch it now, but
Yeah.
maybe
once
when you're
it's done.
dad. Maybe later. I want to see how I look and how I
Yeah,
did. Did I answer questions okay?
Yeah, you answered them great.
Oh, good.
I just ran out of questions. All right, I need to figure
Oh,
out how to
right,
pause
okay.
it. Because when the dogs came in. All right, so could you tell me about your historical events from beginning to the last one, whether it's JFK's assassination, 9/11, you being introduced to water and electricity?
Okay. So since I was born on a farm, the first farm that I really remember, we moved to when I was 2 years old. And it didn't have electricity and it didn't have running water, which meant that that my dad had to go to the well and get water, and then we'd heat it up on the stove. It was a coal stove, so my mom would heat the water up on a coal stove, and then we would have a big round tub in the kitchen, and that's how we took our baths. The youngest went first, so they got water, nice clean water, and then the second one, there were 5 kids, so by the time the 5th one came, the water was pretty cold and it was pretty miserable. Yeah,
Right.
but that's all we knew. So, and then we also had an outdoor toilet. We didn't have facility in the house so that we could, go to the bathroom. So if we had to go in the middle of the night, my mom would put a pot on the floor, and we would go potty in that, and then in the morning we would empty that out into the outdoor toilet.
Jesus.
So when it was really cold, it was pretty
terrible.
miserable. Yeah. Okay, so then I remember getting electricity,
Do you know
Yeah.
when? Like how old you were roughly?
probably about maybe 5,
All right.
probably somewhere around in there.
Mhm.
And I remember there was a light that came down from the ceiling, and it had a drawstring on it, and I remember pulling that because it would light up, like a light
Right.
bulb. So it was really, really pretty exciting, and we kept putting it on and off, and our dad and mom would say, "Stop doing that all the time." So it was pretty interesting.
Right.
And then we didn't have a television, so we used to listen to the radio. And on Sunday afternoons, there was a radio station that we really liked, and it had stories on it.
Right.
Like, I don't remember the names of them, but
Yeah.
we'd all gather around like you do a TV,
TV, right.
and we'd listen to the radio.
Yeah, similar to what we do now today.
Yeah, right. Similar
yeah.
to what we do now with the TV. And then I remember getting, the bathroom put in that house, and so that was pretty exciting too.
Was that roughly at the same time that you got electricity?
Yeah, I think so. I think that was pretty much all.
All like the running water, electricity was all put in when they
Yeah.
implemented around 5, 6,
Right,
something around there.
somewhere
Right.
around in there.
Mhm.
Okay. Then we moved when I was about 7 years old, or 8 years old probably. No, I was 8 when we lived on that first farm, because the minister's wife, she had the same birth date as me. And so one year she made me a birthday cake that was shaped like a lamb.
Right.
And it had, she put coconut on the frosting, and so I never would let anybody eat it. I just saved it for a long time, and finally my mother said, "You gotta throw that cake away." So I did. So that was fun. And then we moved to the next farm, and that was the farm that I really remember growing up on. And that had running water, a bathroom, and nice carpet, and really a nice house. It was a big house, and we really were happy there. But at night, it was very cold, and my dad would turn off the heater, and so we would like pile quilts on us. Really a lot of quilts, more than now.
So you guys didn't have any like indoor heating or AC?
We did, but Daddy turned it off
Yeah, he just
because
turned it
he
off,
wanted
right?
to save money, and he said just put another blanket on. So so that's what we did. But it
Right.
we had a lot of fun in that house. There were like 5 bedrooms, and so only 2 people had to share a bedroom, but there was only 2 bathrooms, so we all had to share the bathroom, and Mom and Dad had their own bathroom. So that was
Right.
really a nice place. But that's where I did a lot of farm work, where I milked the cows and stuff. Yeah. Okay, so then let's see. You asked about was 9/11 first or
No, JFK's assassination was.
what?
JFK's assassination was
Oh
first.
my gosh. I was, Dennis and I were married, and I was working at a hospital, and somebody said the president was shot, and any of us didn't believe it. And they said, oh, it's a hoax, that's not true.
Mhm.
But then somebody said, no, it's true. And so then we all by then we had TVs and stuff, and we all went to the TV, but I will always remember exactly where I was. I was in the middle of taking an x-ray of a person and hearing that news, and that was pretty traumatic for everybody in the country. It was really, it was really something else. And then, so we watched it on till, I remember our first TV, I have to tell you about that.
Right.
So it was a big wood console, and then it had this little square, like probably about the size of that computer.
Right.
And that was where we saw the picture, but it was all black and white. We
yeah.
didn't have color.
Mhm.
Yeah. And but I used to watch like Lassie and Rin Tin Tin on Saturday mornings. They had all those fun shows that we used to watch, and that was nice. But I do remember finally we got color TV, and that was a real big deal.
Do you know how old you were when you when you got your first TV and when color television was introduced?
A couple of years, probably.
Right.
About when I was probably in the 8th grade or something like that. So yeah, that was pretty exciting. That was
All right.
Okay.
And then with those TV shows, do you have like any favorites or one that like you guys would always watch like exclusively if it was on?
Yeah, always watched Lassie.
All right.
And I remember when Denise was born, we watched Lassie, and every time a Lassie would come on, she'd cry. And so I said, okay, we're not going to watch Lassie anymore because every time it's on, you cry.
Yeah.
And she said, well, I'm crying because I'm happy because it always had a good ending.
Right.
But when I was a little kid, I watched Rin Tin Tin, which was about a dog, and that was always a good story. And we never didn't watch that. It was always
just like kind of like a tradition to watch it on Saturday mornings, right?
Right, Saturday morning. We were supposed to be cleaning the house, but we always watched Rin Tin Tin, so that was fun. Yeah.
All right. So then any other historical events in between? Like that was introduced between like the 1960s and 2001?
Well, I think the most historical thing, of course, was 9/11.
Right.
And I remember exactly where I was when I heard about that. I was putting on my makeup, getting ready to go to work, and our daughter Denise called. She was married, and she called and she said, "Mother, are you watching TV?" And I said, "No, I never watch TV. In the morning when I'm putting my makeup on." And she said, "Well, you have to turn it on because the Twin Towers in New York City have been blown up and down." And that was really a scare for everybody in our nation. It was severe. Yeah, it was the start of a real bad war.
Right.
And from then on, all the security tightened up.
Right.
You couldn't go anywhere without being checked, like have your bags checked or your purses when you went to a basketball game or a football game. They always checked your bag, and you were told not to bring big bags. You were told to bring small things, so you couldn't get anything in it. And so that was pretty serious, and it's still that way with security. We just have to be really careful about where we are and who's by us and everywhere around us. We just have to be cautious, and that's not a fun thing to have to be that careful. Yeah, especially for people like me that grew up where we never locked doors. We never were scared that people would steal anything from us, and then now you have to lock your door. You have to be careful, and so it's a big difference. Yeah.
Do you think it affected you or any of the family members after that? Did you know anyone that was working in the Twin Towers or anyone that was there at the time?
I did not. I didn't know anybody that was there, but there were people that were from Sacramento that had relatives living there. So, but I didn't know them personally, and it didn't affect me personally with any losses, but as a nation, we had a huge loss. Because that was a place where, if you went to New York, you went to the Twin Towers building. Both of them. I mean,
Right.
they were twins, you know, they were exactly alike. So, yeah, it was a big deal. But then my sisters and I, we did when we went on a trip to New York, we went to the place where the towers had been standing. And that was almost, we felt almost, I hate to say reverent, but we did. It
Right.
felt, everybody was quiet. Everybody was really reverent, and the church across the street from the Twin Towers building, that's where people that survived kind of gathered. And so when you walked into that church, it was like, wow, that was a real thing that happened. And yeah, it was a beautiful sight, but a sad sight too. Now, of course, they built a new building,
Oh,
and
sure,
I haven't
yeah.
seen that, so I would like to go back to New York
Yeah.
to see that. Yeah.
Could you tell me a little about the Vietnam War and if you remember anything of it, like watching it on TV or hearing about it in the news or newspapers or anything
Yeah,
like that?
the Vietnam War was kind of a muddled up mess, I would call it.
Right.
A lot of things happened during the Vietnam War where drugs, people came home and they didn't know how to function. It was really sad, and there's a lot of people that still remember fighting in the Vietnam War, and nobody knew the real reason why we were fighting.
Mm-hmm.
And people just didn't, I think that's where post-traumatic syndrome came from.
Yeah, definitely.
From the Vietnam War, and I could never put my brain around all of that. It was a kind of a sad era that we went through as a country.
Right.
And for what reason? It wasn't like we won anything, they didn't win anything, it was just,
Chaotic. And
yeah, it was just, that's a good word, Jack, chaotic. Yeah, it was crazy, yeah.
So you guys had a lot more like president assassinations, bombing attacks, and just wars in general. Do you think there's a reason why you had more back then from right now, from like 2004 and forward from when I was born?
Well, you know, the war in the East is still on,
Yeah, that's true.
and it will be forever. I mean, they've been fighting since
Ages.
Bible times, so for
Yeah.
years and years and years and years, thousands of years.
Mhm.
And so I personally feel like for us to go try to help them, why? They've already been fighting for 2,000 or 3,000 years, so
Yeah.
you know, it's sad when we get a soldier that's killed because he's in a war that we won't win.
Yeah.
I
There's
mean,
no end to
never.
it.
We will. And of course, President Nixon resigned from being a president after he did something, you know, bad.
Right. Yeah.
And that whole Watergate thing, I don't understand all of that. And then, of course, President Clinton was impeached, but then it was overturned, and so he could continue his. But then we had the first Black American that was president, and that was Barack Obama. And he was, of course, the first Black president, and that was very historical.
Right.
And he was very popular and still is.
Mhm.
So, yeah, we learn from experiences that we go through. You know.
Right. So growing up and becoming older, did you think that racism was a problem while you were growing up, even as a kid or even like in your mid-20s? Did you think racism was ever a thing?
Funny that you would ask that, because in my little hometown where I grew up, everybody was white, and I wasn't allowed to date a person that went to the Lutheran church or to the Catholic church because I was raised Presbyterian.
Right.
That's probably, really racist or sexist or whatever you want to call it, but
Yeah.
it was definitely part of my growing up. And then I don't think we had so much racism. It's just that the minorities lived in one area and then other people lived in another area. So
Mm-hmm.
We didn't do a lot of mixing. Nowadays, you
See
see
people
everybody
like-
all over the
Yeah,
place, and you can
right.
be in a gathering, and there's probably one from every country,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't even think anything of it. Interracial marriage takes place,
Right, just all
and
that
that's
stuff.
fine.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's a good thing.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah.
All right, so my dad tells me every once in a while. He tells me about the group NWA, and that was his first time learning about how life was for minorities over in different parts of California. Do you know, or do you have anything about that you'd like to say?
We have a lot of Mexican people that come across the border, and the farmers in Southern California especially, and now it's moving up north where I live, because they can hire them for a lot less money, but they're illegal.
All right.
And so there's a big thing about, being illegal and working and getting a wage, but a lot of those people are paid by cash,
Mm-hmm.
and so they don't have to report it
To the
to the IRS. And so there's a lot of people that feel like, if you're going to live in our country, then speak our language and do it right.
Yeah.
I personally don't know how I feel about that because it's never affected me personally,
Mm-hmm.
but I know that it affects a lot of people, and in a negative way.
All right.
I mean, I know we're supposed to love everybody that lives on the earth, but to get everything for free when you come, free food, free everything,
Mm-hmm.
they don't have to pay for anything. The government pays for it, or at least in California, our government pays for it.
Right.
And we that work all the time and earn our living kind of don't support that. So
Right.
I don't know if that answers your question, but
Mm-hmm. So with Donald Trump, making them illegal and kicking them back to Mexico and building the wall, are you okay with that? Like him removing illegal immigrants in general, or do you think that it's okay for them to be there, or is that too similar to what you just said?
well, building a wall is never going to happen. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
There's already a wall up there, so
Mhm.
that's not going to stop the people from coming. People that want to come to the United States for a better life, they're still going to come.
Right.
And
Definitely. I
whether,
agree with that.
I think it's up to the states to decide how they handle that situation. I don't think it should be a federal government that handles that. I think it should be state by
Individual
state.
state that
I think so.
allows
I personally
each-
think that. I don't know if I'm right or
That'd be good.
not, but
Mhm.
if California wants to shut them out, then California has to
Can
do
shut
that,
them
or
out, yeah.
Texas, or any of those border country or states, even coming from, from Asia, or not Asia, but Israel and all those people that
Yeah.
come in.
Right.
They come here to better themselves and to get in their life, but a lot of times that doesn't work out for them. So they don't work, government pays them, they feed them and clothe them and do everything. So I don't really think that's right.
Right. So when you were growing up, did your parents ever tell you stories about stuff that would historical events that had happened in their life?
Well, of course, my dad, he didn't have to fight in World War II because he was a farmer, and farming was very, very important to the soldiers. So my dad never had to go and fight. But I remember, well, it ended in 1942, and that's when I was born. So I don't
Right,
remember a lot about it, just hearing about it.
Right.
But there was a lot of suffrage that
During that time.
was caught. Yeah, at that time was
Mhm.
really a difficult time for us.
Yeah.
And of course, the Jews really suffered because they were burned alive, and
All
it
that terrible
was
stuff.
just an awful
Definitely,
thing. Yeah, I've read books about that, and I've watched movies about World War II and what they did to persecute people. It was
Just terrible.
terrible. Yeah,
Mhm.
it was terrible. But I did read a book one time. I have to tell you this. I read a book, and I like to read a book about children that went through that time. And she was a daughter, and at night they would hide because the soldiers would come in the middle of the night and bang down their door, and then whoever was there, they would shoot them or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, this book told about a little girl, and she was the only girl that in that town, and her dad would go to the cemetery and bury themselves
Wow.
in the ground until the soldiers were gone, and then they'd come back, and then she would say, I made it another day. And that book really told me a lot about what people really went through to survive.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a good book. Yeah.
All right. So we're about to end. Is there anything you'd like to close out with? Anything just like you'd like to tell me, or just any advice you have for any of the kids in the future?
I've enjoyed doing this. I didn't have a clue what questions you were going to ask.
Right. Yeah.
I thought you chose the questions wisely, and I appreciate this. I was very honored to be able to answer your questions the best I could, and to learn a little bit more about myself and what I've gone through in my life. And I'm 77 years old, so I've lived through a lot. But
Right.
sometimes you just live and you don't care to remember, or you just don't remember about
Yeah.
it until somebody brings it to your attention. So
Right.
the advice I would give you and your peers is that be kind to one another. There's no reason not to show kindness to people different than you. Some people have more money than other people, and that doesn't mean we don't have to be kind to them. We don't have to necessarily be generous with them, but kind them, treat with them
Right.
with respect and the same that you would want to be treated. So
Right.
that would be the biggest advice that I would be able to give to you. So thank you for this opportunity.
Yep.
I appreciate it.
Yep.
All
Awesome.
right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's it.